This coming Wednesday, a Harlem institution reaches a major milestone. Sylvia's restaurant will mark its 50th anniversary on August 1st. But this achievement comes on the heels of a tremendous loss for the family behind the business. The restaurant's founder and namesake, Sylvia Woods, died just last week at the age of 86. There have been many tributes and looks at her life in recent days, but tonight we have a different take. As WBGO's Dave Grunebaum explains, for 5 decades, Sylvia's restaurant has offered a window on the history of Harlem.
Inside the kitchen at Sylvia's, there's food in the fryer for one of the restaurant's signature dishes, chicken smothered with beef gravy. They've been preparing it the same way since Sylvia's opened in 1962.
Man, don't mess with perfection.
Kenny Woods is the restaurant's chief executive officer and one of 4 children of founder Sylvia Woods. Kenny was just 9 years old when Sylvia's opened on Lenox Avenue and 127th Street.
We call it growing up Sylvia's. It's somewhat all we knew. My mom and dad, they lived and breathed this restaurant.
The eatery started as a luncheonette with 26 seats and now sits more than 400. There's history on the walls, which are decorated with photographs of customers such as Barack Obama, Muhammad Ali, and James Brown.
Sylvia's have so much history of Harlem because remember the 60s. It has a flavor of that whole period. It even have a flavor of the period of the 70s, the 80s. All of those it's like a growth and it took on all of those elements. The 90s into the millennium.
Sylvia's opened 3 decades after the height of the Harlem Renaissance, which was in the 1920s and early 30s. That was a time when the neighborhood thrived and became known for performances by jazz legends such as Cab Calloway, Count Basie, and Duke Ellington.
We are on Lenox Avenue.
While walking through central Harlem, neighborhood historian Christopher Moore, co-author of the book The Black New Yorkers, 400 Years of African American History, said, Harlem's music echoed beyond New York.
This becomes very much a part of the American music scene. The music is the major element here for the Renaissance.
But racial tensions fueled by discrimination against blacks and Latinos played a part in riots that tore apart the neighborhood in 1935 and 1943. And during the so-called fabulous 50s, while much of America was on the upswing, it was a different story for Harlem.
America is progressing in the 1950s. Harlem is not. Harlem is getting left behind.
Kenny Woods says when his family's restaurant opened, it quickly became a popular neighborhood luncheonette because of the soul food and atmosphere.
We really wanted people to feel that they were coming to our house. You're not just like a customer, but you're a part of the family.
But in 1964, rioting broke out on Lenox Avenue after a black teenager was shot and killed by a white off-duty police officer. Woods remembers shattered storefronts, furniture tossed onto the streets, and fires burning.
Like a war zone.
With at least one exception.
The community was in pretty much rambles, but there stood Sylvia's in the midst, untouched. I guess protection and respect that even in the outrage of that period and the outrage of the circumstances, they would not, don't touch Sylvia's.
But tough times continued for the neighborhood. Woods remembers some blocks struggling with an influx of heroin in the 1970s and the crack epidemic of the 80s.
Even though there was those negative elements that a people was going through, there was still a sense of holding together. There was still a sense of people, the businesses, trying to hold together, hold firm.
And they did. The neighborhood progressed in the 90s and continues to do so to this day. While many middle-class families fled the neighborhood in the 1960s and 70s, many are now coming back. Again, Harlem historian Christopher Moore.
The big change for Lenox Avenue, for Malcolm X Boulevard, was when President Bill Clinton got his office at 125th Street. And then you could just, it was rather dramatic. There was more development. You can see now that there are actually luxury apartment buildings that have gone up in this area of Lenox Avenue, where before they weren't changing.
And why did that happen? Why did it happen? Why did it happen then?
Well, probably because the economics of the incoming community began to change.
Harlem became a very in place for people of all races, drawing college students and young professionals. New businesses opened, including several upscale restaurants in recent years, one owned by celebrity chef Marcus Samuelsson that's right next door to a French bistro. Robert Ponce has lived in Harlem for 30 years. He talked about the neighborhood while sipping a latte at a coffee shop that opened on Lenox Avenue this spring.
There are positive and negatives to the changes. Certainly quality of life has improved. It's great as a resident to be able to enjoy the fruits of what's here. There are places to eat, more places to shop.
But Ponce is concerned about the rising rent prices that come with the neighborhood's increasing popularity. According to the Manhattan Association of Realtors, the cost of renting a standard 1, 2, or 3 bedroom apartment in Harlem has gone up about 30% in the past decade.
Harlem has gotten a lot more expensive to live in. I've seen over time a lot of people who used to be able to live here affordably who suffered through the days when it was very tough to live here and now can no longer afford to live here.
Today, customers at Sylvias include longtime patrons from the neighborhood, people coming from across the city, and tourists from out of town. On a recent afternoon, Carla Thompson, who came from California to visit New York with her daughter, stopped by Sylvias to try the fried chicken and waffles.
I mean, the food is just awesome. And I love my waffles with the butter melted and hot syrup, and they did it to my likings.
Some of the soul food items on the menu have been there since day one, but in a sign of the times, there are healthier dishes too. Decades ago, you could only get your chicken and fish fried. Now you can get them grilled or baked if you prefer. Kenny Woods, the restaurant CEO, says Sylvia's had to adapt.
We diversify. Those are some of the changes that we have done through the years in order to be relevant. Be traditional, but be relevant.
And the restaurant has remained part of the fabric of the Harlem community for 5 decades. Sylvia Woods' children and grandchildren have been running it for the past 6 years. As for the next 50, Kenny Woods predicts it will be even better for his family's business and the neighborhood.
The second renaissance has started. Harlem is on its way to a great and bright future.
For the WBGO Journal, I'm Dave Grunebaum in Harlem.
Sylvias will mark its 50th anniversary on August 1st, the same way it has observed its anniversary for more than 30 years, by offering a free breakfast to anyone who shows up.